Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am the fabled librarian and I am here to continue to tell you some tales. Today we will be going to a story from my past. I always remember this one because there was this fairy tale show on when I was younger, and I loved it. I don't think there were many episodes, and I'm not actually sure what it was called, but I always liked particularly one fairy tale that would come on. I'm actually not sure if it's a fairy tale or fable. I should probably look that up. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. I do think a lot of people have heard of this one, but I don't think it's fully as common. So this one is called Rumpelstiltskin. The triggers I'm using today, I kind of went different. I did a lot of tapping in my last one. So I went with sort of a self-care theme this time. It's not very standardized, but it's things that I feel like make you feel pretty or take care of yourself, like jewelry or things you use when you're doing a manicure or makeup. I didn't realize until I was going through all of my stuff how much makeup I have, which is funny because I don't actually wear that much makeup, but for some reason I have a lot of it. I don't know why. So there's going to be varied triggers in this one. For some reason, when this show came on, I was always hoping it was Rumpelstiltskin. I don't know why. Because it's not that great of a tale, really. I mean, it is, but it's an odd one. But anyway, we'll get started on the tale. Once there was a miller who was poor, but he had a beautiful daughter. And the miller happened to be talking to the king one day, and in order to make himself appear that he was, important, he said, "I have a daughter who can spin straw into gold." Oh my gosh. Can you imagine if you were standing there and you heard your father say, "You can spin straw into gold"? Yikes. Do you think she can actually do it? I have a hard time believing that, even just hearing it. But the king said to the miller, "That's an art which pleases me well. And if your daughter is as clever as you say, bring her tomorrow to the palace, and I will try to see what she can do." And when the girl was brought to him, he took her into a room that was very, very, very full of straw. And he gave her a spinning wheel and a reel and said, "Now set to work. If by tomorrow morning, if you have not spun this straw into gold, you must die." Can you imagine somebody saying that to you? So, as he locked up the room and she was left alone, she sat there and for the life of her didn't seated himself in front of the spinning wheel. And a few turns, and the reel was full. Then he put on another, and the second was full too. And then he put on another, and another, and when all the straw was spun in the morning, and all the reels were full of gold. By daybreak, the king was there, and when he saw the gold, he was astonished and delighted. There's a lot of worrying going on all night to make that happen. But his heart became more greedy. Because what would happen if you suddenly walked in and something that you thought was impossible, the impossible happens? Sometimes people get greedy. That can be a bad trait, depending on how people are greedy. So, he had the miller's daughter taken into another room, full of straw. But it was much larger, and commanded her to spin that in one night if she valued her life. Now, what would you do? Do you think she valued her life? Yes, she did value her life quite a bit. So, the girl knew not how to help herself at this point. What would you do? What would you do in this situation? She was just hoping something good would happen, right? And luckily, the door opened and the little man walked in. And he said, "What will you give me if I spin this straw into gold for you?" "The ring on my finger," she said. The little man took the ring and again began spinning the wheel and turning the straw into gold. And in the morning, he had spun all of the straw into glittering gold. The king rejoiced beyond measure at the sight, but he still had not gold enough. Still not enough, because when is it enough, really? He had the miller's daughter taken into a still larger room, full of straw. I would be really stressed if I was her. And he said, "You must spin this too in the course of this night. But if you succeed, you shall be my wife." Well, that must make her happy. But even if she's the miller's daughter, thought he, I could not find a richer wife in the whole world. But when the girl was alone, the little man came again for the third time and said, "What will you give me if I spin this straw into gold?" And she said, I have nothing left to give. I have nothing left to give." What would you do? You're sitting there panicking, right? And you have nothing left to give. And he said, "Who knows?" Okay. Who knows what he says? He said, "Promise me that if you become queen, you will give me your So she forgot all about it. She forgot. Which is, understandable. She probably had a lot going on, Had to learn a lot being queen. But the little man suddenly appeared in the room and said, "Now, give me what you promised." The queen was horror-struck and offered the little man all the riches in the kingdom in order to leave her child alone. But the little man said, "Nope. Something that is alive is much dearer to me than all the treasures in the world." What do you think she's gonna do? She just wept. What would you do in this situation? She just wept and wept. And she said, "Don't take my baby, please. Please don't take my baby." And he had pity on her. He did. And said, "I will give you 3 days to guess my name. And if you cannot guess my name in 3 days, I will take your child." She had nothing that she could do except agree to these terms. So she thought and thought and thought the entire night of all the names. I mean, there's so many names out there, right? And she only had 3 days to think of something. And she sent a messenger over the country to inquire far and wide about what the names could be. So she did her research, right? She was trying really hard to not give up her baby. So the little man came the next day, and she began with Casper, Melkor, Balthazar. Those are all decent names, right? That could be it. But the little man said, "That is not. It is not. None of them are my name." That had to be very, very, very distressing to the queen at this point, right? And so the next day, throughout the whole night, she was thinking of what the other names could be. What could his name be? What other names could she think of to suggest to him the next day? And she went through the neighborhood. She talked to as many people as she could, or sent a messenger. And now she decided to think of some uncommon names, right? So when he came on the second night, she suggested maybe it's short ribs, sheep shanks, or lace wigs. Oh, sorry, lace legs. They're both kind of strange, whether it's the name I was thinking it was or not. Lace leg is kind of a weird name too. It is uncommon, I agree with her on that one. But each time said, "Is your name Conrad?" And he said, "No." "Is your name Harry?" "No, no, 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 that is not my name." "Perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin." Wouldn't you know it? He started stamping around. He's like a little child. "The devil has told you that. The devil has told you that," cried the little man. And in his anger, he stamped his right foot down so deep into the earth that his whole leg went in. And then in rage, he pulled out his left leg so hard with both hands that he tore himself in two. Wow. He tore himself in two. I think this little man had some anger issues. He was very, very distressed by getting this. He was very, very distressed by not getting his way. So, what do we think here? A lot of times, there's a moral to these stories. This one's a little interesting, because I'm not sure exactly what the moral is. But, who is placed in the worst position here? The miller's daughter, who is eventually the queen. Her father was the first one to place her in a bad position, right? Because he wanted to be greedy and impress this king and, seem important. And he was willing to risk his daughter's life, telling the king a lie. And he had no idea, probably, that Rumpelstiltskin was going to step in and solve this problem. So he was the first person who did his daughter wrong, right? Oh my gosh, I'd be horrified. So then the king, his greed got the better of him. And he also did her wrong. He didn't know that she couldn't actually spin straw into gold. But interestingly enough, I always wonder, didn't he think that it was odd that she never did it again? He never asked her to spin straw into gold again, ever, in the rest of her life. But he just wanted more and more gold, so he was very greedy, and he and the father put her in this horrible position that she didn't know what to do except potentially sacrifice her firstborn. But she was probably young. She probably didn't know what to do. She was scared. So she agreed to do that. But she then had to get herself out of this situation. She didn't have anyone else to turn to. And she managed to survive and to have her child survive as well. So maybe, putting